What's up, my Central Unit? It's the Central Man here, so back again with another classic WWE pay-per-view review. This time we're going back to 2001 to review the first and only Invasion pay-per-view of 2001. So this show was at the Gun Arena. Right now it's called the Rocket Arena in Cleveland, Ohio. On the 22nd of July 2001, the attendance of the show was 17,876. Invasion 01 drew about 775,000 pay-per-view buys at the time. This is the highest gross non-WrestleMania pay-per-view in the company's history. Wow, I think it really outperformed the non-Big 5 pay-per-views instead of WrestleMania 17. And I think it outperformed the Big 5 pay-per-views instead of WrestleMania 17, because WrestleMania 17 drew about a million buy rate at the time. So the commentators for Invasion 01, we got good old JR, Jim Ross, and Michael Cole. So originally this show was supposed to be fully loaded, because at the King of the Ring pay-per-view I just reviewed last month, they kind of promote the next month's pay-per-view fully loaded. You thought that was the next pay-per-view. Unfortunately, yep, they decided to get rid of it and replace it and call the next pay-per-view called Invasion for the purpose of this storyline between the WWF and WCW. I'll get more of that shortly. So yep, no fully loaded ever again. Will they bring it back? It's unlikely. It's basically high unlikely they're going to do that. So I'm not going to get in the whole detail of why the Invasion storyline flopped. You know, I think many wrestling YouTubers, content creators, you know, been doing it over the years. It's completely done to death. You know, let's get to the brief history. So you know the story. By the way, this is the same arena of the final Raw of the Monday Night War era. You know, Vince was in Cleveland, Shane was in Panama City in Florida for the was at the the final Nitro. Bought WCW in kayfabe under his dad's nose. You know, that was the final Raw before WrestleMania 17. So fast forward to after King of the Ring. I consider King of the Ring 1 basically the final pay-per-view before the actual Invasion kicks off. So anyway, so on I think it was the Raw after the Raw after King of the Ring. Sorry, my apologies. So Shane McMahon declared the intentional invade the WWF. Booker T performing a scissor kick to Vince on the June 28th episode of SmackDown. It was it was supposed to be they decided to do fully loaded, but they changed it, like I said, to Invasion, to do a matches between wrestlers from WWF and WCW. And at this moment in time, Vince was still doing this divorce angle with his wife Linda. Linda tells Vince to promote WCW matches on WWF programming. So at this moment in time, I've done my research for the purpose of this review that they were kind of testing the waters. They're trying to, there's rumors they're trying to rebrand and relaunch WCW. They were trying to I don't know, they were going to bring back Nitro or do another new WCW show. Keeping it as a separate brand. It's kind of planting the seeds. What the brand split is going to be with Raw and SmackDown, and to a certain extent years later with ECW. So having their own matches, separate the wrestlers, the story writers, or the writers, I'm trying to say, with its own separate brand. The testing the waters. They had on a SmackDown you had Gregory Helms taking on Billy Kidman, and this infamous match on Raw. I think it was in Tacoma in Washington on I think it was the 2nd of July episode of Monday Night Raw. we had that infamous match on Raw between Booker T versus Bob Bagwell for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. They call it the WCW Championship. Another disrespectful to WCW, so that was received very poorly. Self-proclaimed worst match ever, but you know, there's been better matches, or there have been worse matches before and after. Come on now. So you know, you had like Austin and Angle beating down Booker T. Bagwell joining the beatdown. He ended up getting beaten down by Austin and Angle. It's a way that, and you know, by the way, you're never gonna see both Bagwell ever again in the Federation / WWE. So anyway, so they scrapped the whole divorce storyline between Vince and Linda, you know, because of the situation of this, you know, showing this match. It's funny like a company's bashing another wrestling company over the years throughout the 90s, you know, and also they're just promoting a match from a company you bash throughout the years, you know. Make it make sense, people. So anyway, so instead of like doing WCW as a brand, you know, because it was dying for death, they decided to form this group, you know, call it the Coalition. So anyway, so this was on the 9th of July episode of Raw. You know, they're teasing like I'm reading the, you know, by the way, I can't really find some Raws and SmackDowns on Netflix, so it's the only thing, what you see, what you get. Anyway, you know, it was supposed to be Shane versus DDP in a street fight, but instead they attacked The Undertaker instead, because DDP is still feuding with The Undertaker after King of the Ring, you know. Anyway, so you had the WCW's guys, the guys they bought, you know, because there's many hurdles, you know, why they're trying to do this WCW brand, bringing it back. But there was one massive hurdle. There was no big stars. You know, they did bring in DDP and Booker T. They were big stars, you know, former WCW champions, but unfortunately, like, they were ruined, you know. Like, with great example with DDP, got completely ruined after King of the Ring. So anyway, the other wrestlers they brought in were not really household names. They were kind of like low to mid card guys, and like the Federation guys don't have a clue who they are unless they watch WCW programming religiously. You know, maybe like 10%. The majority do. Anyway, so, and also in the lack of the massive big stars, you know, sitting home because they're still under the Time Warner contracts. You know, guys like Hogan and the NWO, Goldberg, Sting, Scott Steiner, Ric Flair. It's funny, those guys I mentioned end up like working with the company, you know, a year later or years later with Sting, you know. So anyway, so you can tell like this is dying a death. And then on the same Raw, Heyman came out of his commentary desk. He was at the time the color commentator. He announced that, you know, this invasion's taken to the extreme. He brought in his ECW guys like Rob Van Dam and Tommy Dreamer. You got the guys like Taz and Raven and Rhino. You know, they got like some ECW connections. You know, turn on the Federation guys, align themselves with the WCW guys. And also, by the way, Stephanie McMahon bought ECW in kayfabe, but in reality, you know, they didn't really have the rights to mention ECW. They ended up buying the rights of ECW in 2003. So yeah, and the Coalition was formed. They'll soon be called the Alliance, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to call them the Alliance. So that's a brief history how we get there. So because the ECW guys coming in, it was the last dash attempts to revive this storyline because it was dying a death after a few weeks with the WCW guys. Like I said, not have got enough of the big guys to like salvage this storyline. So anyway, so yeah, that's the breakdown. I'll get to more of that later on. So anyway, so yeah, they should have waited like a year. If they should have waited until a year to build this, not in a few weeks. So that's my take on it. So anyway, so let's do the quick result on Heat. So we got Chavo Guerrero represent WCW taking on Scotty 2 Hotty. Before we get to the actual matches on the show, I'm gonna bring up the poster of the show, and I think it's the intro screen for this show. The poster you see right now, it's good to see one half Vince, the other half Shane, and then I think like in they kind of played it. You can see it in the on the screen, like you had like one half Shane, other half Stephanie. I think it's a foregone conclusion. I'll get to that foregone conclusion in the overall rating of this review of the show. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, I did a quick result of the match on the Heat. Chavo Guerrero defeats Scotty 2 Hotty in 6 minutes and 43 seconds. Technically, you can call it like they're basically like the Alliance, aka the Coalition, are 1-0 up in this battle. Yeah, so anyway, let's move on to the first match to kick off Invasion 01. So the first match to kick off Invasion 2001, we got Lance Storm and Mike Awesome represent ECW, slash the Coalition, slash the, I would call it the Alliance, by the way. And also for the sake for this match of the show, I'm just gonna call Mac. They are former members of Team Canada taking on Edge and Christian. So, by the way, Edge won the King of the Ring tournament the previous month. Anyway, before that, you had Lance Storm, trying to cut a promo, but Edge and Christian their theme music interfered. So, and the match begins. So, the dynamics was different because Edge and Christian throughout like the whole year, they used to be heels, the cocky heels, trying to make a lot of excuses to get out of matches, when they were tag team champions. But this time around, they were babyfaces by default because Edge at King of the Ring is slowly becoming a babyface, winning, great example, in his match against Kurt Angle at King of the Ring, previous month. So, anyway, so this was really good. I really like this match. There was one botch. Christian did I think he was going for a move off the top rope, a splash, but instead he kind of tremble. What the fuck I'm saying? He kind of tripped on the top rope and fall over. That was gotta be a good botch. That was a bad botch. I think he was going to do a splash onto both Mike Awesome and Lance Storm, but he kind of recovered, and then you got the heels working on Christian for a little bit, So I'll keep it short and simple. It's really good, it was a really good tag team match, anyway, I think there was one spot, Edge hit, I think it's Awesome with the spear. That was a near fall because Storm broke the pinfall. He was going for hit Christian with the super kick, accidentally hit Edge instead, and then Christian did the he kind of crazily clothesline Lance Storm out of the ring and also himself at the same time. So in the end, Awesome, Mike Awesome, by the way, he was the he used to be, I forgot to mention this, he was he kind of did, I think he a few weeks prior he was the hardcore champion, but unfortunately, he lost, he won, ended up losing the hardcore title, in weeks, we'll get to that later on, forgot to mention it. So in the end, Awesome was going to hit Edge with the Awesome Bomb, Christian hit the spear onto Mike Awesome, and then Edge pins Mike Awesome for the win. So yeah, it was a really good tag team match to kick off the show. I really enjoy it, and this was the final time that Edge and Christian like tag along, really be a tag team on a pay-per-view until in AEW a quarter of a century later, because knowing that they're going to do their rivalry into the autumn of 2001. So it's just what it is, man. So, but besides that, for 10 minutes, they made the most out of 10 minutes. It was a really good match to kick off the show. So it's 1-1 in this I don't know. By the way, there's no stakes into this. You know, it's just basically just 1-1 in this series, because you know, if you count the match on the Heat. Anyway, I'm trying to keep it short and simple for the next match. So the next match, this is with over 2 referees. Earl Hebner represent the WWF, taking on Nick Patrick. I almost call him Neil Patrick, but it's actually Nick Patrick of WCW. You know, and with Mick Foley as the special guest referee. This is technically a lumberjack match, by the way. This is revolved around 2 referees. Yeah, revolved around Earl Hebner and Nick Patrick. They're both senior referees of the WCW and WWF. You know, they're kind of like fighting while like others like refereeing a match. You know, one of them was an arm wrestling match with women. You know, yeah, the other referees arguing at each other's throats between both WWF referees and the WCW referees. This is set up this match on the show, and I forgot to mention about the tunnel thing, the tunnel stage for this show. I forgot to mention this. I'm going to talk about it right now. I kind of like it. You know, it's really good. You have one tunnel for the Federation guys, and the other for the WCW and ECW guys. It's kind of cool. Anyway, so I call it, yeah, this, like I said, it was a lumberjack match, by the way. First off, you had, you had more WWF referees than the WCW referees. You know, on the WCW side, you, like, the one, you had, like, Charles Robinson, aka Little Nate, you got Earl Hebner's son, Brian Hebner. On the WWF side, alongside with Earl Hebner, you got Mike Chioda, you got Tim White, you got Jimmy Calderas, Teddy Long, Holla player. It's just like, you know, the WCW referees got outmatched with the WWF referees. So the match itself, is it a bad match? No. Is it a good match? No. Is it a bad match? Not really. It's just a match, you know, to be honest, you know. Like, it didn't, to be fair, it didn't really shit the bed. It was just a brawl. I don't think, like, Patrick and, it was, if you don't know, Nick Patrick was the second, you know, he's the son of a wrestler called Assassin Number 1, Jody Hamilton, you know. I don't recall him as a second generation wrestler, because he's not really a wrestler, he's a referee, you know. You know, throughout this, he was, you know, a callback to his old gimmick, you know, he was the crooked referee in WCW when he was part of the NWO. I forgot to mention that, you know, there was a hype package, you know, not calling the match, you know, not doing the free count. Anyway, the match was, whatever. They did like that roll up, like they kind of like had that tussle, falling out of the ring. You had like the WCW referees and the WWF referees collided, and then you had the WCW referees, you know, attack Earl Hebner, Foley, you know, eject the WCW referees from ringside. I'm trying to keep it short and simple, folks. You know, like I said, it's not a bad match, not a great match. It's just a match, I'm trying to say. In the end, Earl Hebner basically tackled Nick Patrick, hit him with some kind of, I don't call it a spear, some crappy crossbody, whatever, to win this match, you know. And afterwards, you know, Nick Patrick got in Mick Foley's face. Foley, the fans were chanting for Foley, you know, because he got like a cheap pop, you know. Anyway, Foley hit the mandible claw onto Nick Patrick to end this. So let's move on to the next match. So the next match, this is a champions versus champions match. We got the APA, Bradshaw and Farouk, they were, at the time, they were the WWF Tag Team Champions, taking on the WCW Tag Team Champions of Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire, the former members of the Natural Born Thrillers. So, like, by the way, you know, APA won the tag team titles from the Dudleys. They basically are kind of like the rallying cheerleaders, you know, against the Alliance, you know, the coalition. So anyway, they had some, they had like, you know, you had Palumbo, O'Haire attack the APA. I wish they'd done Chronic, you know, versus the APA. That would make sense because like APA is about beer, Chronic is about weed. You know, it could like, you know, drink alcohol versus drugs. That would be like a more sensible match, but it's whatever, man. So the match itself was good. I really enjoyed this match between the APA and the Natural Born Thrillers. You know, the former members of Natural Born Thrillers. You know, it was hard hitting. So I try to keep it short and simple. So in the end, I think Palumbo hit Farouk with the super kick. Bradshaw, I think it was O'Haire or Palumbo with the clothesline from hell for the win. So anyway, for the Natural Born Thrillers, you know, they end up not doing anything. You know, with Palumbo end up like teaming up with Billy Gunn after the Invasion wraps up, and O'Haire did do nothing. You know, he ended up like a couple of years, like 2 years later, he ended up like tagging with basically he was like Roddy Piper's lackey. I thought they'd do something with him, but unfortunately that's not the case, and then he ended up like getting released and sadly passed away a decade later. You know, it's just sad. You know, we should have done more with the APA for 6 minutes. They made the most out of 6 minutes. Anyway, moving on to the next match. So the next match, this is another Champions versus Champions match. Billy Kidman taking on X-Pac. You know, Billy Kidman is the Cruiserweight Champion, and X-Pac is the WWF Light Heavyweight Champion. So, X-Pac, the build up to this, I don't think I'll call it a build up, So X-Pac, beat Jeff Hardy, in the rematch for the Light Heavyweight Championship. And then also Billy Kidman beat Gregory Helms to win the Cruiserweight Championship. And it was the first time that the WCW Championship changed hands on WWF programming. So you thought on paper, X-Pac is going to be the babyface, Kidman is the heel. Unfortunately, that's not really the case because the fans do not like X-Pac. He got X-Pac sucks chance because he's got that gold away heat. Since the previous year, since his feud with Kane. Anyway, besides that, this was a good match. Both underrated workers. I think X-Pac did that springboard crossbody off the top rope into onto Kidman outside the ring. I think Kidman countered X-Pac's I don't want to call it a senton. I thought he hit the 450 splash, but he hit I think it was a senton. I might be wrong about this. Anyway, so I think you had Kidman kicked out of X-Pac's X Factor. In the end, he was going for a Bronco Buster, his signature move in the corner, but X-Pac didn't counter that. Hit the shooting star press for the win. Like I said, though, it's not really. There's no title matches. There's one title match we'll get to later on, but this is just a champions versus champions match. I wish they'd do more in the current product. In this current product, it'd be cool. Could do a champions versus champion match. Yeah, it'd be not for the championship, but for bragging rights. Anyway, so let's move on to the next match. So the next match we got William Regal, the commissioner of the World Wrestling Federation Championship, taking on Raven, part of the coalition / the alliance. No build to this. It's basically us versus them. Anyway, so this match was average. I'm not saying it was a bad match. It's just bang average, man. This is a match you probably see on Raw and SmackDown, not on a pay-per-view. You're spending a lot of money. I said it. I know I repeat myself. It's true. I feel like some of these matches, like, they just come across a match on TV, not on a pay-per-view. Anyway, it wasn't a bad match. It was okay for what it is. But in the end, you had Taz came along, interfered, hit Regal with the suplex, and Raven hit Regal with the Raven Effect DDT for the win. So I'm gonna recap before we get to the next match on the show. Chavo beat Sky, so 1-1, 2-1 to the WWF, 3-1, 3-2. So far it's 3-all in this series. So let's move on to the next match. So the next match, this is a 6-man tag team match. You know, the Big Show, Billy Gunn, and Albert. You know, who was the forgotten Intercontinental Champion. No disrespect of Matt Bloom. Taking on the team of Sean Stasiak, formerly known as Meat of the WWF. Teaming up with Hugh Morris, that's Bill DeMott, and Chris Kanyon. This match should be. I think this match should be scrapped. Why they put it on? Yeah, this should be scrapped. To be honest, man, I did not give two flying fucks. I think crowd did not give a shit. It was just meh. I try to keep it short and simple. So I think Billy Gunn hit the Famouser onto Hugh Morris, and then you got this brawl between Big Show and and Albert with Kanyon and Stasiak. So in the end, you had Stasiak hit Billy Gunn with a reverse DDT, and then Hugh Morris pins Billy Gunn to make it 4-3 in the series. And afterwards, Big Show just basically chokeslam. I think getting chokeslam like Hugh Morris and Kanyon to get the heat back. But yeah, to be fair, they should just, like I said, get rid of it, man. I feel like some of these matches, they just come across TV matches, man. It's just like mediocre. So let's move on to the next match. So the next match, we got Tajiri taking on Taz. Okay match. Like I said, I feel like a TV wrestling match. I'm actually seeing on Raw and SmackDown, not on a pay-per-view. So no disrespect for Taz and Tajiri, good workers, but they're short. They are short, you know. I don't want to see more time of it, you know. They end up becoming boring, but Taz hit the Alabama Slam onto Tajiri, you know, working on Tajiri. You guys come back. So I think him with the Shining Wizard, something like that, you know. In the end, you had Tim White got in Taz's way. Taz pushed Tim White. Tajiri, the spit. You thought like Regal. I forgot to mention this, you know, because at the time, you know, Tajiri was the assistant to the commissioner of the WWF, William Regal. They were teasing like Tajiri would like join the coalition. He was wearing an ECW t-shirt, but instead it was a rouge to be loyal to the WWF. So I forgot to mention that. So anyway, so you thought Regal would interfere because Taz interfered in Regal's match from earlier, but unfortunately that's not the case. So in the end, Tajiri spit the green mist in Taz's face and hit the buzzsaw kick for the win. So let's move it on to this next match. So this is the first and only title match on this show because other champions on the show were not putting the belts on the line. So the next match, this is for the Hardcore Championship. Jeff Hardy defending the title against Rob Van Dam. So I mentioned like Mike Awesome. So a few weeks, I think it was like you had Mike Awesome, you know, made his debut with the Federation, beat Rhino for the Hardcore title, and then not too long, a few weeks later, I think you had Jeff. You know, it was supposed to be Rhino versus Mike Awesome on the show, but instead they scrapped it. You know, you had I think Edge and Christian cost Mike Austin the title, to Jeff Hardy. This is just setting up the Team Canada versus Edge and Christian match on this show. So Jeff Hardy won the hardcore title because he lost the light heavyweight championship to X-Pac, and then also he kind of rebounds and won the hardcore title because Jeff Hardy ended up winning like a lot of singles championship gold of 2001. He was Intercontinental Champion, light heavyweight champion, and now he's the hardcore champion. This is match of the night, man. I really enjoyed this match, between RVD and Jeff Hardy. But they did what made them over. They're both high flyers, I kind of like it. So, every time Jeff Hardy was going for momentum, RVD cut him off. Trying to remember. So I felt like Jeff always does the barricade spot, trying to do that splash off the barricade. RVD pushed him into the crowd. RVD hit like the I think he hit like the moonsault off one of the barricades onto, I think it was on the first floor of the arena. So anyway, good brawl. Anyway, I think like Jeff Hardy like the RVD did his traditional. I forgot to mention this. He kind of like Jeff Hardy kind of pushed RVD off the top rope, and then Jeff Hardy hit like the sunflip powerbomb off the top rope, onto the. It was outside the ring, by the way. He hit like that sunflip powerbomb. So anyway, so RVD did that kick he does. When Jeff Hardy putting his opponent in the barricade, did that kick. Anyway, so Jeff did the he was got that giant ladder. He was about to do something. You thought he was gonna hit like, was it Will-O-the-Wisp or the Swanton Bomb? But instead, RVD pushed him off the ladder. And he kind of like fan dominator Jeff Hardy off the stage. Wow, like. He ended up like did that splash in that corner. I don't really call it a fan dominator. I think the fan dominator only only works with someone holds the chair for him, like whether it's like Fonzie or his opponent hold it. But anyway, so try to keep it short and simple. So Jeff Hardy was going for the Swanton Bomb, but instead RVD countered it, hit the 5-star frog splash onto Jeff Hardy while holding the belt onto him to win the title. I forgot to mention this, before the match begins, there was a segment of RVD hitting Matt Hardy with the chair. So you thought like Matt Hardy's going to help him, but I understand it'll be told against his character, but anyway, RVD won this match and won the hardcore title. And it's shot. Wow! I'm flabbergasted, man. They did that, In his first pay-per-view match with the company, RVD won. On his first pay-per-view match, he won his first title with the company. Wow! It's just goddamn wow. You thought like RVD's a heel because he's part of the alliance, but instead, no. The fans were really getting behind RVD. Like he ended up did the fans like fan down. The fans chanted a little bit, but it'll get more over in later years. But you could tell like the fans are really getting behind Rob Van Dam. You thought they're gonna do something, but we'll wait to find out. But this match is basically RVD's homecoming, and I think like Jeff Hardy's the gatekeeper for RVD. And it's funny, like they are future WWE champions and also future TNA champions, in later years, in their careers. Anyway, this is match of the night. I really like it. So let's move on to the next match. So the next match, this is the first Brawl. Before we get to this, there was a segment on WWE Times Square. You had there was a guy wearing a WCW t-shirt, And you got Hardcore Harley, who is not booked on the show. He didn't really beat the guy up. He basically ripped his WCW t-shirts and kicked him out. So yeah, I think that's a sign. Do not piss off Hardcore Harley. I don't know what's he look like right now. Is he still in good shape? Is he aged a bit? I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to the next match. So the next match, this is the first bras and panties match. Once again, Mick Foley is the special guest referee. Trish Stratus and Lita represent the WWF, taking on Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler. So I think this is 5-3 now. I'm gonna before we get to the women's match. So. Yeah, this is 5-4 in the series. I'm trying to I'm trying to recap. Anyway, so Trish Stratus and Leah of the WWF taking on Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler of WCW / the Alliance, or they call it the Coalition, but I'm calling for the Alliance for the sake of this pay-per-view. So anyway, nothing much to talk about. The goal is just stripping your opponent's bras and panties, the t-shirt, the trousers and t-shirt. So anyway, Trish and Lita got the victory. With I think Tori ended up becoming a wrestler in the second half of her run with the company. Stacey Keibler's not a wrestler, she's better off being a manager. That's her role in WCW and then in WWE years later. But Trish is not quite the in-ring athlete she become. She's not quite there yet, but I give props to Lita because I think Lita was the most trained wrestler in this match. But I try to keep it short and simple. Not a match I'll go back on it, so not the worst women's match of all time, but they didn't. It was 5 minutes. It was a piss break. It was just way to quickly calm down from the last match between Jeff Hardy and Rob Van Dam. So moving on to the main event. This is the inaugural brawl. It's called. Basically, it's a 10-on-10 or 5. It said 10-on-10. Yeah, this is a 10-on-10 tag team match. So, Team WCW / ECW, the Coalition / the Alliance, taking on Team WWF. So, represent WWF, Team WWF. We got the World Wrestling Federation the World Wrestling Federation champion Stone Cold Steve Austin, Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, Undertaker and Kane, the Brothers of Destruction, with Vince McMahon in their corner, and represent the Alliance / the Coalition / WCW / ECW. We got the WCW and the United States champion Booker T, the Dudleys boys, Diamond Dallas Page, Rhino, with Shane McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, and Paul Heyman in their corner. So anyway, this will revolve around Stone Cold Steve Austin. So you have this story. You have this they were in a partnership ever since the Stone Cold Steve Austin sold his soul to the devil at WrestleMania 17. So you had teaming up with Kurt Angle. I think famously you had Angle wearing the ridiculous small cowboy hat. Austin's character has completely changed, to the build up to this. He's no longer the anti-hero or the bloodthirsty heel ever since he turned heel at WrestleMania. Now he's giving Vince hugs, and he's playing the guitar, singing Kumbaya, even though it's cringe, but it's kind of funny at the same time, Vince demands Austin. He doesn't want he doesn't want the Stone Cold to give him hugs or singing Kumbaya. He wants the old Stone Cold, the bill swinging, middle finger gesture, SOB. Austin don't want to do it. He left, and then he ended up drinking in a bar, and then all of a sudden on the Go Home show, you had Austin, like stunning members of the Alliance, or, like I said the Alliance, they're soon to become the Alliance, but anyway, they stun members of the WCW and ECW guys. He's kind of turned babyface for the first time since WrestleMania 17, so anyway, so the match itself, it was boring. Like, it was good, but not great, like, the match of the night has to be RVD versus Jeff Hardy, but this was just boring. Just boring for me. Yeah, like, everyone had their spots, I forgot to mention this, DDP on the Go Home SmackDown end up kidnapping Austin's wife Deborah, because why? Because he was stalking the Undertaker's wife Sarah, but now he's kidnapped Deborah, and Deborah like showed up fine. It didn't went anywhere, but anyway, it was boring. I wish they cut this match in half, to be honest. Like, it was boring. Everyone had their moments, but it was so fucking boring. Like, the ending was overbooked, but it was way better because you had like Kane chokeslam Devon, Bubba Ray and Rhino suplex Kane through the announce desk. Jericho put Rhino through a table. You had Undertaker last ride Charles Robinson, aka Little Nate. You had like Shane hitting Vince with the WWF title belt. There was no referee. And then you had Angle. You can tell Angle turned babyface for the first time in his career so far. He ended up slowly becoming. He's trying to be this legit guy, moving away from becoming the comedic Kurt Angle, the comedic heel of Kurt Angle ever since when he first debuted. So anyway, so Austin is selling the knee injury. Anyway, so you had Angle locking the ankle lock on Booker T. You thought he's getting the referee up, but instead Austin attacked Kurt Angle, hit Angle with the stunner, and he made Booker T pin onto Angle. 3 count. The Alliance got the victory, and then it just made it made JR's blood boil. Call him a no good son of a bitch. Yep, Austin's now the leader of the Alliance, It just makes no sense. It's mind-boggling, man. I think it was a dumb mistake anyway. In hindsight, he ended up doing the yes chant. Oh, not the yes chants. Fucking hell, why did I say the yes chants? He ended up doing the what chants that got him over, But it makes no sense, man, because like I think he said in like maybe the promo after Raw, he said like the reason why he did that because Vince paid more attention to Angle. He's getting more hugs from Angle than himself. And wow, I don't want to get more in detail of this, It just makes no sense, because Austin, he's joining a group represent 2 wrestling companies that really dropped the ball on him and betrayed the wrestling company that made him a star. Like, I think they need a big star on the WWF side because Angle is not quite there yet. Austin should be in that spot, because there's not really a lot of big stars on the WWF star to be in that position. Because Undertaker, maybe, because The Rock is off still filming The Scorpion King. Triple H is basically is injured. China, it's funny, like China is the biggest top female wrestler in the company. He's soon to be out of the company at the end of the year. Benoit is also injured as well, but yeah, they're kind of fucked, man. So like they don't really need Austin to be in that group, because you got really free you got already 3 guys basically are the top heels of that group, and other members of that group. The 3 leaders should be I think like Heyman, Shane, and Stephanie are basically the leaders, but now they really got some heat, but yeah, you can tell like I don't want to get in details, man. So Yeah, and you see afterwards, see the end. So with Austin, Shane, Stephanie, Paul Heyman, they're drinking beers to end the show. Yeah, that was a sour taste on people's mouths. Seeing like 1 week prior, Austin is turned babyface, kicking the Alliance ass, and then all of a sudden at the pay-per-view he's joining the Alliance. Why is the aftermath? Even though, like I said, they don't really need Austin in the Alliance, but you got Shane, Stephanie, and Paul Heyman are really the top heels in that group, getting the heat. But so the aftermath will get to SummerSlam in a few weeks. So yeah, it was really a bitter way. It was a bitter way to end this pay-per-view. So, my overall rating of the first and only Invasion pay-per-view of the company's history. So, I'm going to give Invasion 2001 a 7.5 out of 10. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. This was a good show. Not a great show, but going into the show, I thought this is going to be a boring, dull, bad show. It wasn't. I'm not saying this was the greatest show of all time. No, this was good. You had some good matches. The matches I like, put in the pros, like the opener, the two champions versus champions match, with Kidman versus X-Pac, APA versus, Palumbo and O'Hare. That's my opinion. People have their own opinion. The match of the night has to be the hardcore title match between Jeff Hardy versus Rob Van Dam. The main event, the inaugural brawl, the 10-on-10 tag team match, or 5-on-5 tag team match, despite it was boring, but it had some moments. But the ending of the main event, with Austin turning on the Federation to join the Alliance and become the leader of the Alliance, it was really a sour taste on people's mouths, But it's a tale of two takes. Like the things I put in the cons is the average matches on the show, like Tajiri versus Taz, Regal versus Raven, that 6-man tag team match. That was, I'm not saying it was a bad match. They were not bad matches. They just felt like matches on TV, but not on a pay-per-view. The bras and panties match was just a piss break. I'm not going to put the referee. I'm not going to put the referee match. The battle of the two referees between Nick Patrick and Earl Hebner in the bad. It wasn't a bad match. It's just a match. People say it's the worst match. No, I don't think it's the worst match. It didn't shit the bed. Didn't outstay its welcome. I'll put it. Yeah, I'm not going to put it in the cons. Like I said, not a bad match. Just a match. But yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people really have sour taste off the show. Yeah, it's disappointing. It's really disappointing. You thought going into Invasion, you thought they're going to get, the NWO, like Hogan, Hall and Nash. You thought they're going to get a Goldberg, a Scott Steiner, a Sting, a Flair. If they really had those guys, born out of their time, won a deal, their contracts, would this show be really good? Would the buy rate of the show reach the same buy rate as WrestleMania 17? I don't know. And it's basically ifs, buts, and maybes, But like I said, this storyline, the Invasion storyline, is a foregone conclusion that Vince is feuding with his kids, So. Yeah, I think I'm not saying go back and watching it. It's not a great show, but but it was a bit of a drop off than King of the Ring the previous month. But not a bad show, but not a great show. It was a fun show to watch, Anyway, so what's your thoughts on Invasion 2001? I forgot to admit, before I wrap this up, man, there were plans. It's funny that this is the only Invasion show they ever did, because there were plans to do another Invasion pay-per-view last year in 2025, between TNA and NXT, but unfortunately, the situation in Gaza, they changed the name, just saying TNA versus NXT. But anyway, so what's your thoughts on Invasion 2001 and this video? Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Smash the like button, click the like, click the bell, subscribe to the Central Man Network on YouTube, be part of the Central Unit for more wrestling videos and more. Next time, we got SummerSlam season over the horizon. SummerSlam's this week. I don't feel like I'm going to do that show, SummerSlam 2026, but it's going to be a different, for this SummerSlam season. I don't think there's any SummerSlam shows I got left to review, but I think the only one I'm going to review is SummerSlam 2001. That will be The Rock's return. That will be later on in August, but I don't know, I might squeeze and conjure another SummerSlam show before I review SummerSlam 01. So until then, this is the Central Man officially signing out. Check you later.